Hi, hello, welcome. My name is Amber, and I thought we would paint along with this reference today, and I'd show you a little bit of how I approach that. Here's the reference popped in the bottom right corner here, and it's a little intense for me. I don't typically paint birds, so I'm going to do a base sketch. I always start with a horizon, and then I usually add in the farthest away, the mountain there, and I'm not a big sketcher, so I won't actually be sketching any of the water necessarily. I kind of give that little angle there. Maybe I'll follow it, maybe I won't. I try to stay loose with these, so I'm going to wet my entire paper. And I used a flat brush. I didn't show that, but I used a flat brush to make sure it was really, really wet. So now I'm just going to make a kind of a halo around where the sun area would be. I go a little nuts with this, so I'm still learning a lot, and I'm still learning how to kind of do a lot of these things, so bear with me. It's just me showing you how I approach this. And I am leaving in a lot of the extra stuff like reaches and pauses and color mixing this time. I typically don't. I cut all that out, so it's usually maybe a 10 or 15-minute class. I did leave everything in, almost everything, unless there was a big arm in the way, or I bent my head over so far that you see my head. But anyway, I am incorporating more of the sky colors. You can also pause the video back where the reference picture was on there, and feel free to take a screenshot, and that way you'll have the image for your reference, and you can have them side by side, working from my screen and your screen, or just listening and watching the reference, or just taking the reference if you like it and use it yourself. You don't have to follow along. There are no obligations to follow along. I am using some handmade paints today, by the way. For the sky, it's called Denim. It's by Addison and Sedgwick. For the yellow, I did use Art Philosophy's Ochre and a little bit of other yellow I had. And the red, I don't remember what I grabbed for that reddish pink color. But the colors don't matter necessarily. Use what works for you, what you're comfortable with, what you have. And so I'm just kind of blurring everything in and making a very kind of an undercoat, right? An underpainting of just very loose colors. So I have a base of something to work on, and making sure that my paper stays wet. Often my paper dries. I am using 100% cotton paper, bahong. I'm also using a Tintoretto brush. I love these brushes. They have great tips on them, and they really just work well. So I did mix up a little bit of a purpley color, blues and reds, and I will put in a little bit of burnt sienna in there just to kind of give it a little bit more of grit, if you will, I suppose. And I do love mixing my colors. I also love using convenience colors, so I will often mix convenience colors to accentuate that color. And so I'm just playing with these clouds. They're very, very, very moody, these clouds in the sky, and I don't exactly get that moodiness, but I am using my mop Tintoretto, or my round Tintoretto, to kind of just bounce around that color. I'm not being super particular or going by those shapes that I see in the reference. I'm just loosely playing with these shapes and dropping a different color. I'm trying to get some of that golden color in there. Again, I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet, how to approach that. I'm still learning, so I'm just kind of playing and experimenting and exploring and staying curious on how these things will actually work out for me, and how one day maybe I'll grasp it and I'll be like, oh, that's it. I mean, it did take me thousands and thousands of trees to get trees, so this will probably take me equally amount of time. So I am lifting up some paint there for that sunlight, and then I'm going to dab it off with a little bit of cloth. The cloth works better for me, honestly, than lifting. I like to lift to get the initial area kind of re-wet, I guess, if you will. And then I will often use the cloth to kind of lift up, and then I'll often later on, after this dries, I'll have to soften that little sun area so it doesn't have the hard lines, because using the cloth does leave hard lines, right? Because you're picking up so much water that it's inevitable. So now I'm just dropping more color and just trying to hint at the glow in those clouds and hoping that it'll come alive, right? I'm still going very, very light. I build this up layer after layer and color after color. So it's not just drop in that dark color and go, right? It's like 5 or 6 colors in those clouds that I'm slowly enhancing and adding to, right? I'm not just taking one color and hoping that's going to produce the perfect cloud, even if it's a granulating color. And mind you, sometimes that will work if you're doing maybe a quick landscape 5 minutes under, and you're just, swapping on a sky like that, or sweeping on a sky real quick. A granulating color can be great and really help give you those depths and those layers without, what I'm doing, building it up over and over and over. And so I'm just dropping down. So as you go closer to the sun, those clouds get a little smaller and more wispier, right? They're not as heavy typically. So I'm following along with that and just kind of playing with that idea. And again, I'm not so tied down to the reference that things need to look exact. I'm getting the general gist. And in the end, you'll see, well, as you saw in the beginning, I didn't get the intense mood that is the beauty of the picture, right? But it's practice, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to practice things, try new things. I'm using my hockey brush here, and it's a super dry brush, completely dry, never gets wet. I use it to sweep. It's my dry sweeping brush, and so I will just dry sweep some of those things and help form some wispies, right, versus hard lines. And now I'm going to move into the water, and I'm going to keep the water pretty light. I didn't necessarily want to build up the water too much, although in the reference, again, it's darker. But you have the freedom to choose your path, right? Choose your adventure, choose your art, and make it how you want it. You do not have to follow that picture. Unless you're here to recreate everything you see, then do what makes you happy. If you want to do that and that's what you crave and you're good at that, awesome, do it. I mean, I'll, cheer you on, happily cheer you on. I love cheering people on. I think it's amazing. But I also like to remind everybody and myself that we all have different styles, skills. We all have different places where we're coming from and where we want to go and where we are in the moment. So it doesn't always have to be what others think it should be, right? It needs to be what you want it to be, what makes you happy and what brings you joy in this art journey. Not what you think you should be or where you think you should be at. Because where you think you should be at, where you want to be at, and where you are often different things, right? I love having goals, but I often have to check myself and realize, hey, you know what? I can't do trees that way, but you know what? I can do trees this way. So let me go ahead and do it the way I can do it versus the way that I can't. So finally, I'm just going to, not finally, but here I am just going to drop in some color for the closest, the foreground, basically, although our foreground is kind of on an angle at this point. But the sea and the land are both kind of in a foreground, right, because they're coming at you at an angle. And the sun got a little out of control. And it's funny, I leave it that way, and I'm not sure why I didn't integrate it a little more, why I didn't blend it, why I left it so bold. I did, and I'm rolling with it. I went with it, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to drop in some rocks. So I've kind of been letting my paper dry a little bit. It's kind of wet a little bit. If you've painted, long enough, you can kind of help different areas of your paper come along, like if parts of it are drying. And this one, again, I don't really mind some of the dry spots, so I'm just kind of playing with what I have. And you could absolutely 100% dry this whole paper right now and re-wet it and have a completely wet spot. But I kind of like a wet space, right? A wet background. But I like the little bits of dry bits because then it gives more texture. Sometimes I don't know. I'm trying to embrace what it is right now, and so I'm just going to keep playing with this and drop in some darker color for that water because I realized how light it really was. And see, my paper's probably dry, but I'm blending it anyway, just to kind of give it a more loose feel. I don't want it to be too rigid or too rigid, I guess, is a good enough word, I guess. I like things soft. I like them loose. I like them suggestive. I like them to maybe just kind of be there and give you the idea of something versus this is exactly what it is. I'm not here to recreate a beautiful image that's taken by a photographer, right? I'm here to be inspired by said beautiful image and create something of my own, with inspiration from the photo, and there's also liberty to do what I like from my own self. So there I'm messing with that sun again. So I just kind of wet it and kind of just did that circular thing to kind of clean out that middle spot. And that brush was a little too floppy, so I switched to this very inexpensive round brush just to kind of loosen that up. But not too much. I didn't want it to be a stark circle. So if you wanted it to be a stark white, you could use a sticker dot, like a little, they make these little stickers that basically could take the place of your sun. Or you could cut down a piece of tape if you really wanted to and block that off. Or you could mask it off. I'm not a huge masking fluid fan. I don't love it personally. I know a lot of people do. And it can be super handy. And I've used it. And I do use it continuously to this day. But it's, I don't know. It has its place. But I don't love it personally. Not yet, anyway. Maybe I will one day. Maybe I'll grow to appreciate beyond words, but right now I'm not there. I am using my cheapy brush to just wash in some more. I also always keep my hand on a dry cloth. You'll see me touching that a lot, especially when I'm working on something that's already dry like this, right? You want to make sure that your brush is not full of water, that you're not just dropping more water into your paper. Although that can, give you some very pretty bleeds and blooms and such and whatnot. But at this time, I'm kind of in the habit of dabbing it off on my rag, and that works for me for now. So I'm just going to keep kind of layering and playing and layering and playing. And, one day at this point in time, I'm thinking like I could probably stop talking, right? Turn on some music and let the music take the rest of the video until the end and I could wrap up. And I don't know, is that something, let me know in the comments if that's something you would like me to do. I do have a tendency just to talk because I feel like I kind of started off as the next door neighbor person that you could paint with and listen to, paint along, or paint your own thing, right? You don't even have to do this demo. You don't have to paint this from this reference picture. You can pick your own and paint anything at this point. It's just kind of to have somebody there with you if you're lonely, or if you just wanted to again play something in the background and listen to some chatter, I guess, or maybe pick up a tip or two. Maybe I've said something that reminds you, oh, I do like doing it that way, or oh yeah, I love that brush, or oh, I want to get some handmade paints and I love the ones she's using, something like that. Sometimes I just think the prompts can be helpful, and so that's where I've kind of guess I've kept going with this. So I didn't even let that dry. You can see where the land is bleeding into the water, and I'm okay with that. I am super duper okay with that. I don't mind. I just love loose stuff so much. I'm just not a realistic painter, and I notice I sometimes try with maybe like the Paint Your Styles, our weekly paint along challenge. I try a little bit more, right? Okay, so I am finally drying. What are we in? Like 12 minutes in, and I finally get the heat tool out. So as Andrea and the other girl, who I can't remember her name right now, what's her name? As they say, let it dry or make it dry. I love when they say that. Anyway, so I'm going to borrow that phrase right now. So, yep, make it dry with your heat tool or let it dry. And so I'm now adding some darker green. I'm using Masha's handmade paints. Again, different maker, but handmade paints. And I'm just kind of adding some more color to that land. It just was kind of lost. And again, I'm not going for the super bold, moody, that is the reference picture. I do love it, but I'm not. I'm just going to let things be kind of loose, let them kind of merge, let them kind of bleed and do their thing and just kind of be there and just play. And I'm switching brushes a lot. So if you notice that, it's something I do. I rarely will use the same brush the whole time I'm working. I end up switching between rounds, mops, liners, sometimes a dagger. And I do that because I like to be fluid with all my, is that the right word? I'm not sure. I like to be comfortable with all my brushes, be able to pick up different brushes at different times. And I also have different brushes I like for different things. I don't like, one size fits all kind of a brush. I like to be able to use different brushes. Often you'll see, or I'll see maybe 8 or 12 dozen brushes next to me by the end of the day that I have to wash. I do wash and clean my brushes every single night. And so my pile next to me just kind of adds up. And I use a lot of brushes. As you can see, I have 4 brush rests. Well, you see 2 right there, and then I have 2 off screen. And I love my brush rests, and I love my palettes. Those 2 are from Masha, just like the green colored paint you see right now. And I love my palettes. I love my Meeden palette on the far right, my Good Rest palette in the middle, and then my Beautiful Swirls palette on the left there. I love ceramic handmade palettes. They are the best to mix your colors on. They're the best to just play with colors on. I don't think I could go back to plastic or tin. You often see me turn my work, and that's a good reason, a big reason I use plexiglass is because I love to be able to turn my work. I like to be able to get the different angles. I like the different perspective. I like to be able to pick it up. I like to be able to, angle it so the paint goes down one way or the other. There's so many reasons and benefits to taping your piece of work down to some sort of surface that's movable, right? Whether it's an easel, piece of cardboard, what are those things called? What are those things called with the little clips on them? Oh my gosh. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. A clipboard. Wow. A clipboard, Amber. The little things with the clips on them. Yep, that is indeed called a clipboard. So again, going in with layer. I realized that my shoreline had zero contrast, so I am attempting to kind of just give it some contrast there between the sand and the water, that little shadowed part where the sun is reflecting. Again, I'm just practicing. I'm not an expert. I am just have learned from YouTube. I've learned from Skillshare, and I'm still clearly trying to learn. There is no way I'm expert in anything, and I don't really feel able to teach, but I do love demonstrating or just showing, you know, what I'm doing and talking about what I'm doing. And so that's basically what I'm here doing today, is just showing you my approach and how I kind of look at things and how I tackle things and what I'm thinking. Like that big yellow pouring out sun, I don't know what I was doing there, but I clearly committed to it because I've kept it there. As you'll see, it'll stay there, and it stayed. So I do want to talk about those colors in the sky. They are a good mix of granulating colors. So they'll do some fun things with the clouds. And as you get better with clouds, and I have my good days and my bad days with clouds. So this was a medium day. I'm not a super fan of those clouds, but I also don't think they're the worst clouds in the world. They end up okay in the end. They do kind of look a little odd now that I'm staring at them now. It's just these three little fingers coming down from the sky. It's okay. It's okay. It works out well enough. So I'm just adding texture to this sandy area, and because, you know, it has some pebbles and some rocks and whatnot. So I was just adding some of that to that little area. And here I'm attempting again to kind of give a little bit of definition and detail to this space between the sand and the water and this area in general. And I'm just adding some rocks and with some granite. That color is called granite. I love that color. It's Granite by Masha. If you haven't noticed, I really love handmade paints. I keep that towel to my right. You can see it's almost black because I dab off all the time. I'm constantly dabbing my brush on that. I used to use paper towels, but I just prefer the cloth now. I would use a paper towel, kitchen cloth, as some of them say, right? or kitchen paper. For a really, really long time, and it would just, disintegrate practically, but I prefer the cloth. So again, I'm deepening that land in the far back, although now that I'm looking at it, it does look a little odd how green it is compared to the rest of this scene. This is my new favorite brush for birds, though. This is a Shimoni Fibonacci liner brush, and it just so smooth. I should have zoomed in on that bird. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I won't. I'm not sure, but it just made this perfectly smooth bird, even though my paper is quite rough. This paper is different than Arsh in that way. I'm not sure if this might be the rough paper, the bahong rough. It might not just be regular press or cold press, but it might be rough because it is super textured. And at times I'm like, wow, even my tape bleeds through pretty bad because it's so textured. Though I am using my cheap tape to use up tape. I have a nice Holbein soft tape, but I'm trying to use up this Jackson tape, so I don't recommend this Jackson one at all, but I do recommend the Holbein soft tape from Dick Blix. It's amazing. I decided to go back here and again, just get in some deeper values and just keep trying to build up until I'm done. How do I decide when I'm done? I keep stepping back and looking at it from a distance and trying to decide how it feels to me. If it feels done, if I like the way it looks, if I feel like I can add more, it would benefit, or if I'm just at the point where, no, I don't know that's going to benefit. Okay, so I did zoom in, so you can see my bird. Look at that bird, yay. And this land, again, I am just adding more, and it doesn't look like what it's supposed to be at all. That's okay. Again, this is just paper. This is just practice. This is just exploring and maybe trying different things for myself and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. These last 4.5 weeks of water have been really challenging for me. I haven't painted a lot of water. I'm pretty intimidated by water, and it's kind of been a process of letting go, of embracing, of again embracing my level of skill, right? Or not lack thereof, but just my level of where I am and where I'm not, and being okay with that, right? I remind myself that it's perfectly fine to be where I am in my journey, and it's just as where you are in your journey, and all our journeys are going to be different, and they're all going at different speeds, and they're all, we're all meeting in the same place, so to speak, but we're all at different levels and speeds and different places. So, there is really no, I don't know. It's just interesting, isn't it? I'm still battling this water. I'm just gonna still add. I didn't make it as textured as you can see in the picture. And none of it I really did, as you can see in the picture, but I did want to add some white. There are some white caps to the far left, right over where the water would kind of tumble into the land. And I don't think it makes a difference using this bleed-proof white, so I don't think it's necessary. And you could use gouache, you could use watercolor, white watercolor, but again, I don't think it's necessary. My water wasn't, dark enough to have that contrast be there. Like, it would be helpful if my water was pretty dark and then I added that white to kind of give it the foamy look, or, like you could see, you can barely see that. So I don't think it necessarily enhanced, but sometimes you just don't know it until you do it. And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, Amber, I gotcha. Right? So it was just that dance, give, take away, put away, get something else, try something different. Do I need shimmer? Do I need, what do I need on this? And you'll see me touching my work with the back of my hand. I like to test its dryness there. So, okay, here goes nothing. I'm sketching out a seagull. I'm terrible at sketching. I drew one first and then I erased him. And so this is my second attempt at a seagull. And the only way I felt super comfortable or okay doing this was making him a silhouette, which doesn't really make sense in this picture, but I did it anyway. And bear with me, you can paint him regularly. You can paint him in his regular colors, but I am just going to use this Etcher 2 size 2 round brush, and I'm just going to fill in my little sketch and hopefully enhance where I can, and hope it doesn't look like a pigeon and it does look like a seagull, although I love pigeons, so I would be quite happy if it ended up looking like a pigeon, but that would be one giant pigeon. So we're going with seagull, and I didn't zoom in on this or anything because you're not going to learn anything from this little very rudimentary sketch and whatnot. This is just me attempting to do something that intimidates me and that I'm not used to doing and that I'm quite scared to do on camera, quite honestly, because it's not natural to me. Yep, it's looking like a chicken or a pigeon or something other than a seagull. And that's okay. It's okay. It's all okay. It'll be fine in the end. Worst case, I would just turn it into a giant rock, maybe. I don't know. What would you turn it into if it doesn't turn into what you want? A giant rock is all I can think of, because what else is bigger on the beach? Bonfire? Could be a bonfire with that sun, that crazy sun I left. I could just make a pile of driftwood right there and we can have a bonfire out on the beach. It actually kind of looks like that now that I'm saying that. It didn't look like that before, doesn't it? Oh man, hindsight. I could have easily done a bonfire, half in the water and half on the beach. All right, jokes aside, I fumble around with this bird. Again, I could have fast forward through this or skipped this part. I don't think leaving this in here was exactly enhancing the video, but I did kind of want to leave a full-time paint along demonstration here just for, I don't know, just for experimental, I guess, to see if this was something that I should even do, or the shorter the better. I do myself tend to like the shorter the better. So there was, see that long pause right there? I would normally typically I would just cut that out and skip all that. I would skip a lot of the mixing and a lot of the extras. And I could probably honestly get it down to about 15 minutes, maybe 20 tops with cutting a lot out. So I guess it's just style. And since this isn't exactly a teaching video, it probably is something that I would next time cut out a lot of stuff. And like this long pause right here, why didn't I cut that out? I don't know. Again, so this is my Shimoni Fibonacci brush. This is the one I won over Christmas. Shimoni Arts, she had a Christmas giveaway and I won one of them. I was so excited. And this liner is so fine. So I'm using it for his little skinny legs, and then he has those little knobby knees. And I also, again, used it for the bird in flight up above him. And so I'm just trying to add a little bit more texture to the beach by dry brushing with a very small brush and just kind of smearing the paint around. Very little water at this point. Mostly just pigment. Oh no, not mostly pigment. Mostly I guess kind of a dirty brush, if you will. Sometimes I'll just dip my brush into whatever's on the palette and sort of just get it dirty And so then that creates the texture, right? Instead of using a particular color, use the colors that you've already been using throughout your piece. And it just kind of works. It doesn't have to be a particular color. Like I know people have like shadow colors where they have specific colors they use for stuff or reflections. And oftentimes you'll find me just using what's on my palette. But you know, again, I'm not an expert, so probably not a great idea to listen to me very often. Just maybe take them as suggestions or things like, oh, yeah, she's crazy, or oh, yeah, no, that's a good idea. I will try that. I'll see how that works out for me. Because there are no rules here, right? It's do what you want. Do what you are craving to learn. Try things that you've seen. Try things that you just thought about trying, you've seen other people do, or that you're intrigued by. I do want to make a note that if you do try other things that specifically look like someone else's style, make sure that you give them credit or ask if you can use it or any of those kind of things. Mostly you want to make sure that you do give credit, even for inspiration. I know that people prefer to have credit where credit is due. And so you want to make sure that you're giving credit whenever you're using other people's work as inspiration, or you're using a reference picture, or you're doing a tutorial or a demonstration, any of those kind of things. You just always want to refer back to. And so that along the lines, okay, tape time. But along those lines, you also want to make sure that you're giving credit to the original person. So a lot of times I'll put a demo out or demonstration of a tutorial I've done, and they say it's, oh, Amber, thank you for this, but it wasn't really me, right? It was the original person. So you want to make sure you're crediting both of us, I guess, if you want to, but really the original person. So that was that. I do end up adding a little bit more because I felt like some of it was lacking. I'm going to add some splatter to the land here, and you'll see how I just use scrap paper to kind of block off the areas I want to do. I used to use my hand a lot, but I've graduated to scratch paper. I don't like paint on my hands anymore. I don't like paint on my skin. Handmade is probably I'm assuming less toxic than other paints, but other paints have animal products, and I just try to keep the paint off my skin as much as I possibly can. So I'm just using a round 4 or 6 to kind of splatter in some brown there just to give the foreground a little bit of more texture in hopes that it adds a little bit of depth. So I did use something dark, and now I'm taking a cloth and I blot those so they're less like circle splatters, right? And more just like smudges or grit or dirt or rocks. So they just look less splattery, and it's just more integrated into the ground versus just kind of sitting on top like splatters. Again, with that green, there I go again, trying to add in some more texture with that background. Looking at it now, I kind of wish I just went like a dark gray, maybe a pain, something to just kind of blend it in. I'm not sure green was the choice I should have chosen. I don't love that part now, and I guess that's what I'm realizing when I'm putting a little more of that darker color in there in the background. That's about it. Just gonna add a little bit more texture to this water here, and hope that again that it just adds a little bit more depth because it was kind of lacking, and sometimes it takes the tape pill to see that, honestly. And it's okay. You can also add the tape back on. You'll often see me put tape back on after the tape pill to add more things that I maybe forgot or realized that it needed. And that's okay too. Do what works for you. There's no rules. Once you take the tape off, doesn't mean you're done. You have to be done. You can also use a mat to frame it to see how you like it. There's lots of different little tricks to see what works for you. You can have just a little piece of mat board that you can frame it with the tape on, and that works too, and you can frame your picture that way. But just finishing up the texture here, and then that'll be about it. That is my little seagull, my little silhouetted seagull that really makes no sense. But again, do what's in your limits, or what is in your box of tricks, right? What you can do, what makes you feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I did do this, and it's okay. It's my first seagull, so I got to cut myself some slack too. So cut yourself some slack. And I really hope you enjoyed, following along and seeing where this took me, and hope that you go out and maybe find your reference picture if this one isn't for you. And I'd really love to see what you paint. So if you'd like to tag me on what you paint from being inspired by this or even anything else, I'd love to see it. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon.